Hey everyone, ever feel like parenting is one giant puzzle? Especially these days. Well, today we're diving into a fascinating approach. Might offer some fresh perspectives. It's called Adlerian parenting.
And it really makes you think differently about it all. Less about controlling a child's behavior and more about really understanding, what's motivating it.
We're digging into The Courage to Not Parent by Ichirō Kishimi.
Oh, fantastic book.
And he actually used these principles raising his own kids. So I'm really curious to see how this all translates to the challenges parents are facing today, right now.
Well, one of the biggest takeaways from Kishimi is this idea that constantly searching for the why behind every little action a child takes, it can actually be a trap.
That really resonates with me. I've definitely been there trying to decode every tantrum, every moody outburst, and it is exhausting. Are you saying Adlerian psychology kind of takes a different approach?
Absolutely. See, Adler believed that all behavior is purposeful. It's goal-oriented, even if those goals are beneath the surface, even if the child themselves isn't consciously aware of it.
So instead of getting caught up in that whirlwind of why all the time, we should be trying to understand the purpose behind the behavior.
Exactly. What is the child trying to achieve, even if it's in a clumsy way or a misguided way? Are they seeking attention, connection, maybe a sense of control? When we understand that goal, we can start addressing it, I think, more constructively.
That's interesting. It's like shifting from being a detective to being more of a problem solver.
That's a great way to put it.
But how do we even begin to figure out those, underlying goals, especially with younger children who might not be able to really articulate them?
Well, that's where observation and empathy become so important. And this ties into another key principle of Adlerian parenting. It's moving away from this trap of praise and punishment.
Okay, now that one's a little harder to wrap my head around. Isn't praise a good thing? I mean, we're kind of conditioned to shower kids with compliments and, gold stars for everything.
It seems so intuitive, right? But Kishimi argues that both praise and punishment, they kind of create this dynamic where kids become reliant on external validation. They're chasing after that good job sticker instead of developing their own internal compass of what feels right to them.
So instead of thinking, I clean my room because it makes me feel good to have a tidy space, they're thinking, I clean my room because mom will be happy with me.
Precisely. It's like praising an adult for every little thing they do.
Right.
It just feels weird and insincere. Children, just like adults, thrive on a sense of belonging and contribution, not because they're chasing after a well done.
Okay, so I can see how that constant need for validation could be detrimental in the long run. It's like they're always performing for an audience. But if we're not supposed to praise, then how do we encourage our kids?
This is where that courage, from the book's title, really comes into play. Adlerian parenting is about giving children the courage to be themselves, to make mistakes, to learn and grow at their own pace.
So how does that translate into actionable steps? What does it look like to parent with that kind of courage?
Kishimi gives this really poignant example in the book. It's a heartbreaking story about a child who died in an accident. And it really underscores the fragility of life, and it reminds us that simply being is a gift in itself.
That's a really powerful reminder. It makes you realize that our children's worth shouldn't be contingent on their achievements or even their behavior necessarily.
Exactly, and it's a radical shift from how we often approach parenting, It's about valuing who they are unconditionally rather than just what they do.
Wow, that story really makes you think. It makes you reevaluate your priorities. But I'm also wondering, how do we balance this unconditional acceptance with, well, the realities of raising kids? I mean, they're not always going to behave perfectly.
Right, you've hit on a really crucial point. Adlerian parenting, it isn't about letting kids just run wild. It's about shifting, I think, from control to influence.
Okay. From
From those external rewards and punishments to really fostering inner motivation.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Yeah.
I know Kishimi mentions the power of saying thank you, but that seems almost too simple. How can something so small actually make a real difference?
Well, it's about the underlying message, right? When we praise, even with the best intentions, it often comes across as judgment, like we're the authority figure deciding what's good and bad. Thank you, on the other hand, is about acknowledging a child's contribution.
So instead of saying, good job cleaning up your toys, it's thank you for tidying up. It makes the house feel so much calmer.
Exactly. You're acknowledging their action and how it contributes to that shared family environment. It helps them to feel like valuable members of the family unit, not just someone who's constantly being evaluated.
That makes a lot of sense. It's less about their performance and more about their role in the whole family ecosystem. But what about situations where a child is deliberately being defiant or acting out in a way that really disrupts things?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. Adlerian parenting, it encourages us to see these moments not as battles to be won or lost, but as opportunities.
Okay.
Opportunities for learning and connection, both for the child and the parent.
That's easier said than done, though, right? When you're in the middle of, like, a grocery store meltdown.
Oh, absolutely.
What does that actually look like?
Right. Yes. So imagine a child throws a tantrum because they want a candy bar, right? Instead of yelling or giving in, an Adlerian approach might be to calmly acknowledge their feelings.
Yeah.
You know, I hear you, you really want that candy bar, and it's frustrating when you can't have it, but without giving in to the demand.
So it's about validating their emotions without necessarily validating their behavior at that moment.
Precisely. It's about teaching them that all feelings are okay, but they don't dictate our actions.
Right.
And then you can shift the focus to problem solving together.
So you might say something like, how about we choose a healthy snack together for when we get home?
Exactly. You're involving them in the solution, helping them to learn to manage their emotions and make positive choices even when things don't go their way. And this builds resilience, which is so crucial for navigating, the ups and downs of life.
This is really making me rethink my whole approach. It feels so much more collaborative and respectful than the way I was raised. But I also worry, are we setting kids up to be too soft? Not prepared for the real world.
That's a really common concern. But actually, studies have shown that children raised with this kind of empathy and understanding, they tend to be more resilient, they have better social skills, and they actually perform better academically.
Oh, wow, that's reassuring. So it sounds like this approach isn't just about raising, well-behaved kids. It's about raising emotionally intelligent, adaptable humans.
Exactly. And that's what Kishimi means by giving children courage. It's the courage to be themselves, to face challenges, to make mistakes and learn from them, knowing that their worth isn't contingent on being perfect.
It's really refreshing to hear about this approach, especially in a world that often feels so focused on, instant gratification and needing that external validation. But I'm also thinking about those bigger challenges parents face today. Things like screen time, social media comparisons, the pressure to excel academically. Can Adlerian parenting really hold up in the face of all that?
That is such an important question, and it's where understanding the deeper principles behind Adlerian parenting becomes, I think, so essential. It's not about having this set of rigid rules for every situation, but it's about adopting a mindset that equips both parents and children to kind of navigate these challenges together.
So it's less about no screen time after 7 p.m. and more about figuring out a family approach to, technology use. Yeah, it feels healthy and balanced for everyone.
Exactly. You're moving away from that kind of authoritarian, because I said so, dynamic.
Right.
And you're fostering a much more collaborative approach.
I can see how that would be so beneficial, especially as kids get older and start to crave more autonomy. But what about those moments when despite our best efforts, things kind of go sideways? A child gets a bad grade or they say something hurtful to a friend. How do we guide them towards taking responsibility without resorting to, blame and shame?
Well, Kishimi, he really emphasizes the importance of separating the child's actions from their inherent worth. We can acknowledge that a behavior was hurtful or irresponsible without labeling the child as bad.
So it's more about saying, that wasn't your best moment, but I still believe in you and your ability to make things right.
Exactly. And then you can involve them in the process of making amends. Maybe they write an apology letter or brainstorm ways to be a better friend.
It's like you're giving them the tools and the agency to fix their mistakes rather than just punishing them for, messing up.
Exactly. It's about fostering that sense of responsibility and resilience, those inner resources they'll need to navigate all the inevitable challenges life throws their way.
Yeah. It seems like a key part of this approach is kind of shifting our own mindset as parents, too. Like letting go of that need to control everything and just trusting that our children are capable of learning and growing, even from their mistakes.
That's beautifully put. It's about fostering a relationship built on mutual respect, open communication, and just that unshakable belief in a child's inherent worth.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. For anyone listening who's feeling inspired to maybe explore Adlerian parenting a little bit further, what would you say is one tangible step they could take, maybe even today?
That's a good question. I would encourage everyone to simply observe their interactions with children this week. Just notice, how often do you resort to praise or punishment? And challenge yourself to maybe replace those reactions with just genuine curiosity and a desire for connection.
That's great advice. And remember, like any parenting approach, it's a journey. It's not a destination. So be kind to yourselves, be open to learning, and just keep those lines of communication open with your children.
Beautifully said. And remember, the courage to not parent isn't about being passive.
Right.
It's about finding the courage to parent differently, with more empathy, more understanding, and that unwavering belief in our children's capacity for growth.
This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Adlerian parenting. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.